Hey everyone, in this short video, I'm excited to talk about our latest tool addition, VPC plus Cloud Migration to IBM Cloud. My name is Faleel Mohideen, and I'm a Solution Tech Lead in IBM Cloud. With me here is David Nguyen, who's my colleague and is an architect in IBM Cloud. David will do a demo for us and walk us through how to access the tool and highlight the capabilities in a bit more detail. But before we talk about this tool, I would like to say a few words about the IBM Cloud VPC Gen2 platform and why customers should be moving workloads to this environment. VPC and IBM Cloud allows you to define a virtual private network where you can deploy, secure, control, and manage your cloud resources with ease. The platform is evolving fast with new features and capabilities being added at a rapid pace. This prompted the need to provide a simple to use tool that will help customers migrate workloads and infrastructure to this new platform with ease. When it comes to migration, there are a few ways you can go about it. You can develop scripts or Terraform templates to orchestrate the migration. You can go through the UI, or you can engage consultants to help with the effort, big or small. All of these above approaches have different pain points. So our mission was to provide a tool that will accelerate migration to IBM Cloud, simplify and automate the migration process, and minimize the cost and pain associated with the migration. Now to talk about the VPC Plus Cloud Migration tool. The tool is delivered in partnership with Wanclouds and provides an easy and automated software as a service solution that allows customers to discover resources in the Cloud Classic environment, select the resources to migrate, and execute the migration in phases or as a whole. We understand that migration may not be one and done process, and customers will have to do this in phases as their business demands. The tool has some neat features to accommodate this with the concept of workspaces. The resources that can be migrated include virtual service and volumes, cloud load balancers, wired-off firewalls, and a few other critical components. More details can be found on the IBM Cloud Docs page. The tool takes the user through simple steps to configure the new VPC environment and customize as necessary. One of the important features of this tool is that you do not need to leave the confines of the tool to set up your VPC environment. Everything can be done from within this tool. The tool also incorporates setting up your transit gateway so you can have connectivity from your new VPC environment to your IBM Cloud Classic environment. The first phase of this product is to facilitate migration from IBM Cloud Classic environment to IBM Cloud VPC. Subsequent enhancements plan will address a few other migration motions, which will include bare metal migration and migration from on-prem to IBM Cloud. More importantly, this tool is free for customer use at this time. At this point, I would like to hand it over to David, who will provide a quick demo as promised and talk through the capabilities of this tool.
And my name is David Wood. I'm with IBM Cloud. I'm one of the solutions architects. And today's demo, we're going to talk about the VPC Plus migration tool. So we're just going to go over a couple things. It's not going to be too long drawn out, but definitely want to give you some highlights on how to get to the tool itself. So we're starting off from the catalog page. You could do a search for VPC, or you could actually filter under the catalog for under migration tool. So let's go ahead and do search, and the tool that we're looking at is VPC Plus Cloud Migration. So go ahead, click on that. If you want to have more information about it, we have the About page. We also have the Docs. Okay, so if you click on the Docs, we have lots of the information getting started about it, a couple key pointers, some migration considerations, what's supported. So everything's listed in this docs for yourself, and also some how-to guides. All right, when you're in the ordering catalog tile, just go ahead and leave the region as is, and then the service names, you can change it to a service names that you want, or you can keep it as is. Then you can select a resource group. If you don't select one, it's going to automatically select your default. When you hit create, what it's going to do is going to get you to the next steps of the page. And what it's going to tell you is give you a quick high-level overview of the page itself, right? Some of the quick things you have to do, right? So steps 1, 2, 3, 4, go ahead, read through those. And I really encourage you to read it through it before you actually start the process. Another thing I want to point out is that the name of the resource is now showed here. And it'll also be appeared in your resource list at a later time if you ever decide to come back to it. So now if you're ready to take on the next journey, we give you a quick summary of the migration. So, what are the general flow of a migration as you work through your migration. Okay, so we kind of list out some of the key points that we support. But again, everything is within the document, and I really encourage you again to read the document. Now, once you're ready to take the next step, you notice that we have this migrate button. It's going to take you and redirect you to VPC Plus, which is hosted by the Wanclouds team here. So when I click on that, I open up a new tab or a new browser, and it's going to get you to the login page. Now, as a new user, don't need to register. All you need to do is go ahead and log in with your IBM ID. By logging with the IBM ID, it take care of a couple of things. One, you're authenticating with your existing IBM ID. Two, you're authenticating against the IBM IM. And lastly, it'll take care of the registration service for you, right? So that's all taken care of in the back end, and that will be done then. So go ahead, click on that, and a lot of the stuff will take care of from you on the back end. Your profile is going to be based off your IBM ID's account, where email address you're associated with the IBM ID, and everything from there. Now, when you log in, have you noticed this page? I don't have a starting page as I have an existing account, okay? But there are a couple things that you'll need that I did forget to mention, and that's what will be mentioned in Get Started Guidance. There are a couple things that you need to capture ahead of time. First thing is your API keys. You'll need the API keys for both on your Classic as well as your VPC. You'll need to set up your cost storage on your VPC side, and make sure you allow the resources between Classic and your VPC storage, cost storage, to be able to communicate with each other. So, and you also need the actual cost bucket S3 ID. With this information, what you want to do is go into your cloud accounts and start creating these accounts. And these accounts are what's going to use to query your information, right? So under IBM Cloud VPC, if I was to add a new one, you'll need to add, you go ahead and put a name, put your ID, and then this one is actually your CRN for your cost bucket, okay? Once that's done, it's going to validate, and once it gets valid, you will see a valid button. So that's one, and the second one is the Classic account. Again, it's going to use your API key, and make sure you add in your account and your API key here. And this is what's going to allow you the tool itself to discover all the resources on the Classic side. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. One other thing I want to point out after you create and everything is valid, on the left side is where your menu and your management information tree. And on the left side, you can see we have Wancloud support, and they have lots of quick knowledge base, how-to, how-to guides, and some videos that you can also go through to check. As far as cases that you need to open up, you open up through here. You can open up chat support. They're open around the clock, 365 days a week. So they're there to help you with your support with anything regarding with the migration from your Classic to your VPC. Now, so once we already have that already set up, on the left-hand side, we have a few items that you can go through. Well, the main thing is that you want to do, and once you're ready to start your journey, is you want to migrate the infrastructure. Okay. Once you click on that, you have a Discover and a template. Really quickly, what Discover we'll hold off for now, but what templates is, if you already create an ideal architecture, infrastructure architecture on the VPC side, you can actually save it and then basically but create another instance of that architecture in a different MZR. Or if it's not with an MZR, maybe it's for a given application or workloads. You have the ability to recreate that same setup. You no longer have to go through and set it up every time and figure out the security groups, the VSIs, and a lot of the access policies. That can be done at a template level. So that's what this template level. I don't have anything to show you, so I'll just go ahead and we'll disregard that. But when you start your journey, you want to start as a discovery. Okay. Right now, so I have a single classic account, but if you have multiple classic account, list out and you can choose which classic account. Okay. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that it can also migrate some of your firewall rules. And these firewall rules are going to be existing in your Viata 5600 today. So the VRA, so your VRA appliance, you can actually upload the configuration file. One thing to keep in mind that is that the tool itself does not log into any of your VSIs or any to your VRAs or anything like that. So it's pretty much using your existing APIs and the API keys that's available today to actually go in and to do its discovery. So for demonstration purpose, what I have is, let's go ahead and log VRA, and what it's going to do is help translate some of the rules, right? So if you have security rules that you have in place, it'll take that in for you. One thing to keep in mind, the rules has to be in a set command state, okay? So you can do a show command, configurations, pipe it no more, and save into a file. And this is the file format that you want to save it in. So within the VRA, it will capture your gateways, it will capture your IPsec, and also your security rules. There are some things that you have to be aware of. One thing is definitely that in the VPC construct, right, there are some limitation of how many rules that you can have, right? And it's a default set of rules. If you exceed beyond it, you can change it out within the VPC tool here itself, or the other way is you also can increase it if you really need to. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. So now let's go ahead and look at the tool. So you notice that it did a quick discovery and discover everything within your classic account, all right, that you allow it to create. So what it does is trying to give you a final state of what your VPC is going to look like at the end of the day. But when you discover it, and what it can translate out to is it gives you multiple information out here. And if you notice, it's kind of almost intuitive itself. And what we really quickly want to point out are a few things here. On the outer edge, right, this dotted line is essentially your region where you're going to do it at. And this is what's control on the right hand of your working space, okay? So as we start moving through it, some of these stuff is going to change through, okay? So first thing is, before we go through is, let's go ahead and pick the VPC account I want to use, the region that I'm planning to set up, and the zone. Then lastly, let's go ahead and pick the resource group that I want to be part of. So once you click next, it's now when you can start actually to determine where you want to start working out. So if you notice, the region already shows you the US East, okay? Now, the next thing is determining of your migrations. You can migrate everything what you see here, or you can break up into small bite-sized migrations, okay? So what you want to look as, it says, what, I want to migrate a specific workload. Let's say I want to migrate my email server and its database. And I want to use that as my migration for my project. So you can select multiple devices and work off of it. So the way to go through it is we have this bulk selection. Go ahead, slide that thing over. And now what it can do is start selecting devices. But obviously, it's a little bit challenging to read it from here. You can hover over it, and it will give you some of this information. But let's talk a little bit more closely about how it's being represented in the GUI itself. Okay, so I mentioned the out dotted line is your region. Okay, then within here you have these gray boxes, all right? And these are essentially your IBM Cloud load balancers that you discovered, or the tool discover itself. If you click on some of it, it gives you the name. If you actually click on it, it also gives you the relationship to some of the servers that are attached to it. So for example, if I click on this, it gives me information which servers actually is being binded to or associated to this load balancer. So it gives you a relationship between the load balancers and the server itself, right? And also kind of highlights what the load balancers and where you are within the tool on the right-hand side. So the way it's grouped again, servers or VSIs within subnets, and then if you have empty dots, it's just going to show you a blue dot with no gray inner circles inside of it. Okay, there are some other ones, and these are like the gateways and some of the IPsec tunnels that has also discovered, and this is discovered through the configuration file that you uploaded. Again, the configuration file itself, you don't need to add to it. If you don't have one, it will still discover just fine, but if you want to have the migration as part of it, then it's good to upload that configuration file at the time of the migration itself. All right. Now, if you look at the right-hand side, it gives you a list, right? A very good high-level list, and it's in a collapse format of the different subnets prefix that it learns. Okay, instances are your VSIs, and if you actually expand it out, it will show you all the different instances. Okay, you can actually search by names, the type, OS, which data center is in, and it'll filter it down for you. So these are the ways that you can actually filter down to which devices that you want to start working off of again. So again, the purpose is most likely in a lot of the cases like this, you're not gonna migrate everything at once. You're gonna migrate in bite sizes that's very manageable to you and that can meet your timelines. So let's go ahead and work through this. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna select all my servers with DN, okay? And because I moved this over here, this is going to allow me to select the multiple devices. When you select the servers, what it also is going to do is kind of brings out the forefront. You notice how the shadow comes out in front of you, and it kind of gives you it. You also notice that the servers in the GUI kind of highlights out there, kind of give you some representation if it's in the same subnets, different subnets, and things like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all that, all the servers I want. From the load balancers, because I know I have some servers are attached to this load balancers, let's go select my load balancers to it. Oops, since I already selected, it's already highlighted. One good thing is you can select additional subnets, but any servers that you have within the subnet, it's automatically going to collect that information and bring it forward with you. And that's the same thing that for any security groups that you have with it. All right, so I selected all my main components and resources. You notice I'm not going to select into the subnets, but I can. If I actually select a subnet, it's going to select both of the servers along with the subnet if that I want part of the migration. But in my cases, I'm not. So I'm just going to unselect it, and let's go ahead and remove these components. All right, now these are the essential components I want to do. You notice I didn't select the subnets because that will get brought over automatically. I can if you want, if you feel you need to add to it. But again, the tool is intuitive enough to understand that this subnet needs to be part of the migration. Now, so I select all the information. Now, there's two ways to kind of help reduce the noise, right? To let you focus a little bit more onto it. You can delete what I have selected, these components, and work with the remaining elements, or I can keep what I selected and remove the other one, which I'm going to do is use the nice little filter icon here. So let's go ahead and select that. And then you notice that it pretty much filter out all the information. So when I do that, one thing to keep in mind is it doesn't go into my classic and delete anything, all right? All my devices, all my components in classics are still there, they're still running and still active, okay? So all it does is really reducing the noise itself. Okay, so once I have the information, there are things that it filter for me, right? I just want to show you, right? I have SSH keys to some of these elements of these servers that it captured, so it will pick that up for me. Any security groups that are part of it, it will pick that up. Unfortunately, none of my VSIs have security groups, but if it did, it will pick that up automatically, and same with any access list as well. Okay, so next, it's going to ask you the subnets. So the subnets you can put in here are pretty much the predefined RC 1918 subnets, right? These are your private space address. What's going to do is going to translate your current 10.0 subnet on your classic and move it into another subnet address. You can stay at the default, You can move to different, but I really highly recommend that you definitely move it to a different one, especially if you're thinking about at a later time to have a trans gateway to give you a connection between your classic and your VPC. And there are some use cases where you might need that, right? For example, if you have inter-process communication between multiple servers, if you have databases or data that you need to capture within the classic with your VPC, then you definitely want to have a transit gateway set up in between those two and to ensure that communication still exists. In that case, if you do that, do not select the 10.0 network. What you want to do is select a 172 or 192. You can definitely keep the existing, again, avoid that. I would really highly recommend, again, stress enough more than anything to do that. You can use a custom where you can subnet down further, but again, if you use custom, you must stay within the private IP space, okay? You cannot put a public address space. If you try to do it, it'll give you an error and won't let you proceed forward. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and stick with 1.72 and click next. What's now it's gonna do is it's gonna take me and now pretty much give you the new IP addressing scheme that you have set up. So here's my one prefix that's gonna set up and the number of subnets underneath it, right? So each of these new subnets. Now, if you have a name for your subnet, it's going to try to maintain that information for you. Now, within each of these subnets, we'll obviously have your VSIs associated to. So when it comes time provisioning, these VSIs itself will provision into the correct subnets, give you the same sort of subnet architecture that you have within the classic. So that's really taken care of for you. So you don't have to really be a subnet guru and pull up a subnet calculator and figure all this out for you. It'll take care of that for you. All right. Couple things. If you notice on the right-hand side, you might have some error, right? Some of these icons, and that's just saying, hey, there are some validation errors that has been created that we need to fix before we can provision. And that might be because you're missing some SSH keys, because when you move to VPC, you need an SSH key for some of these VSIs. If not, you can add it in here, right? You don't need to do it at the time of provisioning or add it at a later time. But so you have the opportunity to add here. But if you did it at the added SSH key at the time of provisioning, it will pick that up and carry it forward for you. Another thing is maybe your naming might be not an acceptable format that VPC allows. So it will walk you through, right? So you can do the show errors and click down and it gives you a little bit more. Another thing that I want to point out is that you're not stuck with what you discover. You can also add to it, right? It says, hey, at a later time, you know what? I know I'm going to need another subnet. I can create an empty subnet, and these are what these plus buttons. Or I want to create another VSI. It's not going to be based off the current servers that I have, but it might be another VSI I want to create. So I can create another VSI for it. So during time of provisioning, it will create that for you. Okay, so but before we start that, the first thing is obviously you want to give a name for your VPC, right? Right now it's just gives us a default WIP template. We can just give it some other VPC name right there. And once I click save, you notice my VPC has changed. Okay, now let's go ahead and fix the errors that I have. And you notice that's missing some attributes. Let's go ahead and take a look what's missing and go ahead and click edit. So when you look through it, discover, and the reason why this is not working is at an image level that is not supported on the Gen 2 side, right, VPC side. So that's why I'm getting this error message, okay? So you can obviously choose a different image that you want to provision, but when you do that, you're gonna you won't be able to move your data over from the classic side over to the VPC side. So there are some things. However, if you have secondary volumes, like your storage attached disk that you created, those secondary disks can be carried over. And actually, this does have it. So for example, I know that in my boot volume, being that it's on an unsupported image, I need to select a new image. I'll select here and go ahead through here. And then I can also change out the compute profile, right? I'm not binded by that specific profile. You can bind it to a new profile if you wanted to, right? If you know for for a fact that you need to upgrade, you can definitely change to a different profile as you would. So you're not restricted to that level. You can create another one. So I already have an existing data volume, right? A secondary attached disk, and it gives you the information what it is. And so I'm just going to keep that. I can add additional volume if I want, but in this case, I'm not. I'm just going to keep everything as is. It gives you a lot of basic stuff. Because there's no security groups, I can add security groups, I can build the security groups, and I can create it if I want to. And the tool itself will give you that ability to really go down and add to it, right? If I have security groups I want to add, I can bring it into, select the security groups and attach it. If I don't have one, I can create one, then come back in here and add to it. So I have that ability to do that. Actually, let me go back here and change out to the OS image, right? So I know my current image, and I'm just going to keep everything else as is. Again, lastly, I have SSH keys. So you have an existing VPC, and it's going to query your existing VPC, and it's going to also allow you to use your SSH key on your existing VPC to attach to it. But if you don't, this is going to be probably a very short list. But if you remember, it actually discovered some of the SSH key on my other VSIs, and it's going to make those available for me to use. So I'm just going to select that. You can select multiple SSH keys you want to add to it, or how many you want. Or if you don't have an SSH key and you want to create a new one, you can also add it through here through this plus button. So let's go ahead and click update. All right, now you notice that it's changed to red. So first thing is that because I'm using an image, I changed my image, I cannot migrate my boot image from my classic. So that's why this grayed out. However, this image itself has secondary volumes, and you notice that these tiered disk storage, I can migrate those. Now, if you recall at the beginning, I mentioned that you need a cost storage bucket set ahead of time, right? So I set one ahead of time, and it'll list it out for here, which I can use. Second is now you have your list of your secondary disk. Word of caution is that in the classic side, you can have up to 4, but with VPC, with this migration tool, you only can migrate up to 3 at a time. So if you have 4, you can choose which 4 you want, right? So you can select which one you want, right? So in this case, I only have one. Actually, I want select that. So once I select OK, now you notice the icon changed to green, and that's going to tell me that it's going to migrate that as well. Great. So let's go ahead and fix the other ones here. I don't know what's the error message on this one. Let's go ahead. And subnet 1, you notice it also tells me what subnet 1 I have here. And voila. So here's my SSH key. It's not attached to it. Let's go ahead, update that. And here I can actually migrate the boot image, right? Because it's actually discovered the image itself. It's a supported image. There's no error. And you notice that now the boot disk is being migrated. And you have the option to migrate both the boot and the secondary, or just the boot or the secondary. So you have a lot of flexibility within the tool itself. All right, so let's go ahead. And I'm guessing I don't have an SSH key on this one. So let's go ahead and fix this out. Oh, again, CentOS. Let's change that. Skip, update. Perfect. In here, if you notice, like some of this, like this dn run, if I didn't select this primary, it's not going to migrate. What it's going to do is, in this case, if I decide to migrate, it's going to create a new VSI with this name, and then you have to go in and configure yourself. So again, the tool is not it's very flexible enough to give you as much power or as much what you want to do at your fingertip. All right. Now, one thing I mentioned, before I jump ahead, you notice my validation right here. Everything's all checked, so I'm good to go. So I can actually go ahead and click continue. But if I click continue, that means that I want to migrate all of my resources right here. I actually can break this down into even more finite chunks here. So I can say, you know what? This is going to be my web server for my email. And actually, I don't want to migrate everything today. Right? I just want to do a couple of them before I do that. So I can actually do select provisioning and select what I want to migrate from the VSI. So I can select here, and then go ahead up here and says yes. So what essentially I did is, you know what, I want to migrate these two guys first in my new VPC, right? So when I have my VPC set up, it's going to set up all these infrastructure for me, my gateway, my subnets, my load balancers, my VPC ahead of time. But from that, only two of my VSIs is actually going to be moved over. Okay, so when I hit continue, you notice that it gives you a summary about what's being moved over. So one thing I also want to point out is, before I go ahead and click provision, is if you move any of your data volume, especially your, if you move actually any of your volume, because part of this is what is using the image template function under the IBM Cloud Software Classic side, right? And part of that, when it does that process, is that it actually needs to shut down the VSIs in order to take that snapshot. Okay, so you'll notice the VSIs will get taken down, the snapshot will occur, then it will bring it back up for you. So it will be disrupted from that standpoint if you're going to move any of your volumes over with the VSI itself. Okay, but for VSIs that are not moving, for example, if I decide not to move my dn-run as is, it won't go back, it won't do any shutdown of the VSI in Classic. We'll just create a new one. Okay, so but that's not because of the tool, that's just dictated how the tool or the feature works within IBM Cloud. All right, so go ahead, click provision, off on the race. So now it gives you a provision report, right? It kind of walks you through, and you can actually expand it out, and it pretty much shows you how where it is in the process. You can actually go into IBM Cloud and really start seeing some of these stuff, some of these resources start provisioning it out. But those are the main things I want to point out. Again, if you go back to your resource list, you'll see under services your migration tool that you have in place. Okay, so we can go and you should see, if I can find it, and then right here, there it is. That's my resource, and I always can come back at a later time and go ahead and migrate. So click on that, and all logs me in. So it gives you that single sign-on. If you ever close a browser, doesn't mean your migration has stopped. You can actually come back in here and go in here and see what's in progress. So thank you very much for watching my demo. If there's any questions that you need or help, the tool VPC Plus, Wanclouds have chat support, so go ahead, click on that, and they're more than happy to help you, walk you through with the tools and help you with your migrations. Again, thank you very much. Happy migration.